The big question at the start of the 2022 season was whether the new regulation changes would mean the cars could race closer. When we watch an F1 race, we want to see cars close to each other, fighting for positions and overtaking each other. From 2014 to 2021, F1 cars couldn't get close to each other, and after the first few laps, a lot of races were very boring. How have the changes managed to address this problem though? Stick with us to find out. You're probably wondering why, after one of the most exciting seasons in decades, F1 is completely overhauling its rules and cars. There's a few explanations for that. Traditionally, regulations have been changed for safety, because if F1 keeps letting teams make their cars faster and faster, the last era cars were the quickest ever by the way, then it gets more and more difficult to make the sport as safe as possible. That may have been a factor for this year's revolution, but the main reason is that F1 wanted to move on from an era that has been, Max Verstappen's title win aside, dominated by Mercedes, while also providing fewer overtaking opportunities than hoped due to the weight, speed and downforce of the cars. The new rules, which were initially planned for 2021 before being delayed due to the pandemic, are aimed at improving the show for viewers. Basically, F1 is hoping for more unpredictability and plenty of excitement. Excitement brings viewers. More viewers means more sponsors, and more sponsors means more money. It's a simple equation that drives sporting decisions made around the world. So what was the problem with the old rules? The debate over the dirty air effect in Formula 1 has raged for as long as the vast majority of Formula 1's 20 drivers have been alive. F1's dependency on surface-generated downforce that caused drivers to struggle to get close enough to rivals to attempt to pass has been the subject of endless debate. F1's estimations are that the 2021 cars lost 35% of their downforce within 3 car lengths of the car in front, and almost 50% in a single car length. You may have heard the words dirty air. Well, it's that dirty air that's caused the problem. As the air passes over a Formula 1's car's surfaces, it produces a wake of turbulent air that hampers the aerodynamic flow of the cars behind it. This wake, nicknamed dirty air, can be of benefit to a following car on the straight, as the car in front is effectively punching a hole in the air and doing more work, aka creating a slipstream. But it's really bad in the corners, as the 35 to 50% loss of downforce severely hampers performance. But what about the new cars? They claim to drop these numbers to just 4 and 18% respectively. Once the cars get within a few car lengths of each other, they lose 50% of their downforce. Ross Brawn, F1 Managing Director, explained when the concepts for the new cars were made public for the first time in 2018. That's a substantial amount of performance loss. So we set about understanding why that was and how we can improve it. While the radically redesigned ground effect cars have certainly proved pleasing when it comes to looks, the key question on everyone's lips at the start of the 2022 season, beyond who's looking the quickest, was can drivers finally run closer behind rivals without being heavily hampered by the invisible force of disturbed air? One of the changes for the 2022 season that is helping more with overtaking and close racing than most people expected is the new 18-inch tyres from Pirelli. The 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix marked the first real-world test of whether F1's new aerodynamic and tyre rules are having the intended effect. Speaking after the race, Pirelli's head of motorsport Mario Isola said the performance of the tyres in the opening round had been encouraging, if not exactly in line with their forecasts. One of the most encouraging elements from the opening race weekend, Isola says, is that drivers appear to have more freedom to push to overtake cars ahead with the new tyres and the new ground effect cars. That should allow drivers to follow more closely to their rivals without losing too much performance. The tyres seem to suffer a lot less from overheating, Isola said. Drivers could push during the race, that's visible. When they were following each other, it was possible to overtake more than once. Until last year, if you remember, they were trying to overtake 1-2 times and the tyres were overheating and they had to pull back. While in Bahrain, we had many different actions on the track. I'm not just talking about the leaders, but also in the back. If you remember the opening Grand Prix of the season, and how could you forget it? It was so good. Then you will remember the battle early in the race between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. The two drivers spent 3 laps battling each other, overtaking each other multiple times a lap. Those are the types of battles that F1 Managing Director Ross Brawn will have envisaged when he first imagined the new rule changes. The battle in Bahrain isn't the only evidence that the new regulations are working though. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix featured the fourth closest finish of an F1 race since the beginning of the hybrid era in 2014. Max Verstappen crossed the line just 0.549 seconds before Charles Leclerc did. The battle that led to that finish went on for lap after lap, following a late safety car courtesy of Nicholas Latifi. It seems like it's a little bit easier to stay behind, said world champion Max Verstappen, after his first full day of running in Red Bull's new RB18 back at the Barcelona testing. At least, you don't have this weird loss of downforce where sometimes you have a lot of understeer or massive oversteer. Of course, I don't expect it to be fully gone and that you can follow on the rear diffuser because of the speeds we're still doing in an F1 car, but it all seems a bit more under control. Considering some of the close racing Max has been taking part in since these comments, we're sure he's convinced of the rule's success. He isn't the only driver who's commented on how much closer the cars can race now. Nicholas Latifi may have had a rough start to the season with 2 crashes in 2 races for the struggling Williams team, but he still had time to notice the changes in the new cars. I did actually have the opportunity to get behind a few cars, he said. And yeah, it's definitely easier to follow, without a doubt. The Canadian driver has had a rough time on the track recently. 3 crashes in his last 3 races is a very poor return, and if teammate Alex Albon is able to find some form, Latifi could have a lot of pressure on him before long. One driver who is outperforming his teammate at the moment is George Russell. The young Brit has had an uneventful start to the season. He's been quietly racking up points though, and a 4th and 5th place finish in the first 2 races of the 2022 season have been enough to get him to 4th in the Drivers' Championship. While Russell believes that it is now easier for cars to follow with the new rules, he admits to being concerned over how the ground effect aero dependency appears to have lessened the effect of slipstreaming down long straights. I think the following has been improved, but the slipstream effect has been reduced quite substantially, I think, said the new Mercedes driver. So I don't really know. You obviously need that delta on the straights to be able to overtake, as you can only really overtake at the end of a straight into the corner. I think we can follow closer, but from what we've seen, the slipstream effect is definitely less effective, so we'll have to wait and see. The drivers seem to be convinced that the new rules are working, and as fans of the sport, we think that they are as well. The opening 2 races of the 2022 season have been incredibly exciting to watch. If this continues, we may be in for the most exciting F1 season in a very long time. What are your thoughts on the new regulations? Have this season's opening races been up to your expectations, or were you expecting more? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to hit the notification button and give us a like while you're there. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.